So yeah, I wanted to talk about bulk payments. And I would imagine that a large proportion of the audience has just gone to sleep because bulk payments sound like the most boring thing in the world. I've spoken about this before, and I'm here again because I really want to emphasize the importance of this. And I'd say actually the importance has gone up in recent weeks, months. What do we mean by bulk? Well, let's say an employer or a government or department or whoever wants to send money, a regular payment to a long list of people. We all know this scenario, payroll, whatever it might be, a long list of people and money. It could be different amounts for each person. It could be the same amount. So they tell their bank to do it. Here's the list. Go ahead, action it for me. The bank, the DFSP, doesn't know and really doesn't want to have to care either where these people have accounts. They've just got an account identifier. In the old world, the pre-Mojaloop world, that list would be by DFSP identifier and account identifier. So bank code plus account number, something like that. But of course, what we actually want to do is make payments to an alias that we can resolve using an Oracle somewhere. Why do I care about it, and why do I think this is important to Mojaloop? It's an extremely common transaction type. I've mentioned salaries, but there's also pension payments. There's social payments, particularly in this COVID time, where COVID relief payments are being made in many countries, and also or institutions that make a lot of loans. We have finally discovered actually want to make those loan disbursements using a bulk payment list. They do not want to make single payments. To support this, makes your service more relevant, more usable, more reasons for DFSPs to connect to the hub, and it's more likely to be profitable. It's a service you can charge a sender for. And what's more, it puts liquidity into people's accounts, which they are then inclined to use, and maybe those transactions after that will actually go through your hub as well, and you can charge for those transactions. So it's about making hub more of a utility, supporting the full range of transactions and improving the flow of money round and round and making everybody happy. From our deployment in Myanmar, we had three core use cases. There was loan repayment, there was loan dispersal, and we had electronic cash transfer, which I confess we were viewing as something that was to be done further down the line, not something that we really had to worry about now. However, it seems that there's been a bit of a mismatch of expectations between the service delivery team, us, and the DFSPs, and that's come back to bite us somewhat, as I'm sure the DitsaWorks team would agree. So where are we in Myanmar? Well, we've got loan repayments. They're live. We have transactions running. We've got real rails, real money. It's all flowing, and we've got settlement services running, and everything's hunky-dory, more or less. Modulo the odd bug here and there. Loan dispersal. It seems that there are a number of DFSPs, MFIs, who actually have a requirement not to do loan dispersals on a one-by-one basis. So they want to generate a list of dispersals to be actioned at end of day or overnight or whatever it may be. Submit that to WinePay and have them actioned and delivered to the mobile wallets. That's particularly the ones that are using cloud-based platforms, where those platforms themselves simply don't have the capacity, the bandwidth to be mucking around with independent transactions, single transactions for multiple MFIs. They just want to create a list and send it and forget. Also, we found that in electronic cash transfers, the Mojaloop bulk payments as currently implemented isn't a great match for the established ECT sector. Electronic cash transfers is a market that's been around for a good few years. It's usually run by NGOs, Save the Children, World Food Programme, Mercy Corps, and I've been involved in a number of those programs in a past life. So to support ECT, we need some enhancements to the bulk payment service offered by our Mojaloop hub. And this is a plea for support in doing this. So we know that bulk is deployed in the hub. In the Mojaloop instance that we have deployed in Myanmar, you can run bulk payments through it as it stands. So why am I here talking to you about it today? Because it transpires that not all bulk payment services are created equal. The current implementation that we have is kind of a plain vanilla implementation, if you like. It can take a list that's intended for a particular payee DFSP. So a payer will give me a list for a particular wallet provider, maybe CB Pay, maybe one of the others. And I can, through the hub, take that list and deliver it directly to CB Pay for actioning. I take your list, Mr. Vision Fund, and I give it to you, CB Pay, and everything is fine. And that's really where the functionality of the Mojaloop hub at the moment begins and ends. So it's great as far as it goes. It works well, but there are two outstanding issues. First, the payer DFSP, the organization that's sending the money, they neither know nor care where people have their accounts, which means that they cannot create separate lists for individual destination mobile wallets. And secondly, at the other end, some, not all, some pay DFSPs, mobile wallets, they don't have modern, capable, fully functional back office services. They can only accept individual transactions. So when I try and pass them a bulk payment list, they have no capacity to do anything with it. And that gives us more than a little problem, as I'm sure you can realize. Now, we've been round and round on solutioning for this and really trying to come up with solutions, both short-term and long-term. So we have two solutions that I'm going to present to you now. One is the quick and dirty, let's get it running short-term solution, which is this. We are blessed in Myanmar, and I don't use that term lightly, by the fact that we decided to use Payment Manager. Payment Manager connects each DFSP into a Mojaloop hub. And that means that we can do orchestration at each end, which we didn't expect when we did this, but Payment Manager is such a brilliant solution for connecting DFSPs into the hub that it had significant benefits before we realized about bulk payments. So our initial solution, I hate the phrase, but it's true, quick and dirty solution, is to take a bulk payment list from a DFSP and break it down into individual transactions and fire them through the hub. We can process them one by one. We can go through each of the steps, discover, agree, transfer, and we can assemble a single bulk transfer response based on the results of each individual transaction and return that to the sender. So that link between the payer DFSP and Payment Manager is the standard Mojaloop bulk transfer interface. So bulk quote request, bulk quote response, bulk transfer request, bulk transfer response are implemented in the interface with the payer DFSP, but we are breaking it down into separate transactions. That'll work, that'll get us live, but it doesn't scale. It's simple, it's straightforward to implement, and it does also, as a corollary, support the destination wallets' inability to accept bulk payment lists, because we're just giving them individual transactions anyway. So this gets us up and running with being able to process bulk payments, particularly for loan disbursements. The cons, well, it puts the load on the hub, and it's only suitable, therefore, for relatively short lists. We reckon that, you know, if you were to give us a payments list of up to 2,000, say, transactions, picking that number out of the air, we will be able to process those lists using this route. So it's good for loan disbursements where it's perhaps only a few dozen. Not good for ECT, where it could be in the tens of thousands if you're on a national scale ECT. So this will get us through the short-term solution. It will not solve the problem in the long term. So we need to, in parallel, be working towards the full solution. So as I said earlier, we have a solution. We got lucky. We use Payment Manager, and therefore that gives us a place to build in the orchestration around the Mojaloop Hub's capability to process individual bulk transfer lists. So the strategy is to accept bulk payments from a DFSP, and we break them down into multiple separate per DFSP lists. So we go through the bulk payments list, do a discover on each entry in that list, and we create separate bulk payment lists per DFSP list. We then submit each list to the hub in turn, and we accept the bulk transfer response. We build up the overall response and pass that back to the payer DFSP. The pros, it scales well. It makes use of the hub's bulk transfer capability in a way that makes sure that we could deal with lists in the tens of thousands, potentially in the millions if we had to. Cons are it's more complex to implement, and also it doesn't get around that problem at the destination wallet of the wallet not being able to accept a bulk payments list, which will mean that we have to demultiplex. We have to break it down it's for some wallets, we'll have to take the bulk payments list and squirt them through as individual transactions to the destination DFSP. That's not the end of the world. We can do that. So this is a simple summary of the process. At the payer DFSP, we initiate the transfers by passing a bulk list. The payment manager instance goes through that list and breaks it down into DFSP specific lists, and it routes each bulk transfer request to the Mojaloop hub for processing. Each beneficiary DFSP might have to break the bulk list into individual transfers, do each one in turn, push the individual transfer through to the destination DFSP, and beneficiary says, yep, I've got the payment. We return the transfer response back to the payment manager, which builds an aggregated bulk transfer response and pushes it back to the hub, which returns it back to the payer DFSP, which builds an aggregated bulk transfer response across all DFSPs and forwards the bulk payments results back to the payer DFSP and thence to the NGO, the government department, whichever it may be. This is just a simplified version. We have much more detailed documents around this. So that sounds like it'll fix everything, except it won't. For loan disbursements, it's probably good. It's probably okay for salary. In both of these cases, the sender probably already knows an alias for the payee. When you join a company, when you sign up to an MFI, you probably give them your mobile phone number or whatever identifier you choose to use for the delivery of payments. It doesn't work for ECT. And in this case, we are going to have to address the registration details, because for ECT, you're dealing with people who probably have not registered at all with an MFI, for example, or a percentage of them will not have. There'll be some who have. They may not have a mobile wallet when you start. So there's a process there of needing to encourage people to sign up for some form of account in which they can receive an electronic cash transfer. And the biggest problem of all is alias registration. So payers will have to gather payment data from payees. They'll have to get the alias from these payees, and they're going to have to somehow interface with the Mojaloop hub, or more accurately, the Oracle and the ALS service, to see if their alias is currently registered. If it's not, then register it, or maybe even look to see if somebody else has registered that number to try and defraud the actual payee, the actual beneficiary. And this is a whole digital identity management issue, which we are going to hit head on when we try to move into ECT at scale, that is. So we have to make sure that we expose a suitable endpoint at the Oracle for use by payer institutions, which means we need the whole access control piece around this as well, to make sure that people are not maliciously making entries in the Oracle, that only recognized institutions are doing it, and people are not deleting other people's registrations. And also, it'd be good if we could collaborate through in this area with the recognized bulk payment front ends, and we know there's OpenG2P out there, and maybe we should be collaborating with them on this piece. Not the payments, not the routing of the transaction, nothing else, but the compilation of bulk payments list for ECT. We should also be looking at links into digital identity. When you start getting into bulk payments, questions of identity come up all over the place. How do you make sure payments are going to the right person is the obvious one. How do you change it if I change employer? How does if I change my mobile wallet, how do I make sure my employer continues to pay into the correct mobile wallet? We should be looking to explore the potential link with emerging digital payment initiatives. The synergies between Mojaloop, MyFOS, OpenG2P, to me, are glaringly obvious, and we should be exploring them more. And we know that a lot of social payments, salary payments, are facilitated through a link to digital identity, particularly some of the government-led ones, where we're looking for ghost beneficiaries, ghost employees, people claiming pension payments on behalf of relatives who died years ago, that kind of thing. Helps ensure that I get the payments, so we deal with misrouting and fraud. And here we have an opportunity, because if we play it right, the Oracle and the ALS partnership is integral to a pay me approach, which allows us to actually facilitate payments to the underserved and the people who don't realize that they're entitled to funds of various forms. So what next? Well, currently there are two of us who are developing user stories for both the short and medium-term solutions, and from that, the backlogs. The short-term solution will be developed by our team for Myanmar. So we're going to collaborate between VitsaWorks and ModusBox on the development of the short-term solution for Wine Bay. The medium-term solution will, I hope, be supported or adopted by the product council. I'm probably going to talk about that tomorrow. So with that, I'll come to an end on what I'm hoping is not the most boring presentation of the day, and hand you back to Simeon for any questions.
Thank you so much, Paul. I just glancing at the chat. I'm not sure if that, Michael, if your question is the 3 PPI or a different one.
Well, it was really just saying that it probably wouldn't be right of us to assume that the DFSPs would always be the best providers of these bulk and ECT services. and that therefore we ought to provide a route through the 3 PPI interface to manage bulk as well.
It's definitely a route that should be explored, Michael.
I would add to that the obvious separation between what is considered campaign management, which is all of the issues you raise, which are complicated, and what is payments. And it's not the function of the ALS Oracle to deal with those issues. That's the function of payments routing. If there is a layer between them, for example, you could say that a household is entitled to a payment, not a person.
Yep.
So you don't pay the person, you pay the household, and there's a person who's responsible for that household. That whole issue is registration and campaign management, whereas the actual routing of that payment to the person is a function of bulk. And I think you've got a very good, well, I'm gonna call it a solution because it's as close as anything we have right now to a defined way to do this. And I like very much what you have. I also agree that working with those that are in this space already with OpenGDP and Mythos is a great idea to find out what it is that they depend upon for payment providers so that we get the bulk interfaces right for the payments part without trying to sort of mop up all of the details that they do well and better.
I agree, Miller, entirely. But to me, this is about an ecosystem, and we at Mojaloop have our place to play, our part to play in that, and we should be trying to cooperate with the other members of the ecosystem to make sure that we're delivering what the deployments that we are involved with need.
Yeah, well said, Paul. I agree, and it's nothing wrong with us leading and bringing them in as needed. Just being sure that we don't want to displace the good work that's going on in that space already, and subsuming that into a new role for us.
I think that would be overreach of the grossest sort. I think leave those who are experts in it to lead in that. We just need to play our part working with them.
Excellent. I think we will wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Paul, for leading that session.